Well, good morning, everybody, and I must say it's a pleasure to be speaking here. This is the second year that I've been speaking. I spoke here 2 years ago, and unfortunately last year I couldn't make it. I got saddled out in Ottawa with close friend Tom Kennedy, who you had the pleasure of speaking or listening to earlier. And I have to admit, it's a pleasure to be back here. It's an event that I look forward to every year, and it was really disappointing to be out in Ottawa last year and to have missed it. But it certainly is fun to be back again and to see a lot of faces I haven't seen in a while. In the short time that we have here today, I just want to go over 5 or 6 different points, give you some updates on some of the cases that are happening, and a couple important things that I'd like everybody to remember. I've been fortunate enough over the last couple years that we've been able to achieve some success on various issues, and I want everybody to know here, I say it on a regular basis because I want a lot of people to know that I don't forget about it. I couldn't be standing here today without the help and assistance of a lot of people behind the scenes. Wes couldn't be doing this without the help of a lot of people and a lot of volunteers behind the scenes, and I wouldn't be here either. There are so many people that have helped me, that have allowed me the kindness to, have given me the kindness to stay at their place when I have to travel across Canada and do the work that I'm doing. And it goes from a lot of people that are directly involved to even their own families that have helped out quite a bit. And I want everybody to appreciate that as much as I am, as a number of people have said at the forefront, in the front lines I should say, that I couldn't be here without standing on the shoulders of the people that are supporting me. And there's a lot of them, and a lot of them are here today. I'm certainly not going to go through names because I have the wonderful habit of forgetting people, and I want everybody to know that each one of them are very, very important to me. And when we look at the work that's getting done, not only the people like Ed and Debbie and Wes and various other people who are now starting to go on the offensive, as I've taught, but they've allowed me the ability to help them, and they have been able to provide various help to me in return to get the work done. So before I go any further, please let's give some applause to all those people that work behind the scenes because they deserve it. Okay. The most important thing that we're doing here today, or what we're doing, as a close friend of mine, Fred Carvers, had said several years ago to me, he said, "Dave, keep in mind the most important thing we're doing, and that's motive." When I got involved 10 years ago, I was like most people. When I first heard about income tax being unlawful, great, hey, no money off my paychecks. I got more money to spend. I was only 20-something years old. I can go party more and so on. And I'll tell you, within a year, that was gone. I didn't even care about the money coming off the checks anymore. And it's important that with what we're doing, that we keep focused on the motive and why we're doing it. If the only motive of being here or of being in the freedom movement is simply personal gain or personal satisfaction of some kind, making more money, then we've lost sight of the goals that we're trying to achieve, and it makes it that much more difficult to get to those goals. So it's important that we keep in mind the ultimate goals and objectives and the motives of what we're trying to do. In keeping with that, I have came to the realization about three to 4 years ago, actually even a little bit longer when I was in Manitoba, that we could no longer defend ourselves anymore. Does anybody here actually think you get a fair hearing before these judges in our country? No, you don't, do you? Even if it's a speeding ticket, a parking ticket, right up to just about any charge under the criminal code. So I looked at alternatives, and some friends of mine in Manitoba, who are ex-Revenue Canada officials, were telling me about how they used to lay charges, or tried to get some charges laid in Manitoba against Revenue Canada officials. And they got told by a Justice of the Peace, sorry, we can't take the charge because it's too high profile. In other words, some people are above the law, and we're just not going to take your charge. And they held up a blank sheet like this, I guess, and held it up and said, sorry, we're relying on this document that we're not going to take your charges. And they said, well, show us the document. What is it? And they wouldn't show it to them. Their names are Heather Marecki and Beverly Sherrico, magistrates in Winnipeg. I believe Sherrico, of course, got promoted. And they couldn't get this document. It was a secret directive from the Chief Judge of Provincial Court. And his name was Stephenson, who was brother of Stephenson, who was the finance minister of Manitoba for the Filmon government for several years, who was also brother of the chairman of MTS, another Stephenson. So a nice little clique in there of corruption. And eventually Stephenson got promoted, replaced, whatever, by a chief judge named Webster. She was a former federal Crown prosecutor. Anybody who's dealing with Revenue Canada will know what that means. She prosecutes for them. And now she's a provincial court judge. And I pestered her for months and months, and I know a number of people have probably heard this, to get that secret directive. Why weren't they taking the charges? And finally she wrote me a letter and said, well, Dave, you can come down and see the document, but we're not going to give you a copy. You can just come down and view it. And I continually tried and tried, and she said, no, you're not going to get it. So I went down with a buddy of mine, and Gordon's a good man, Gordon Gillespie in Winnipeg, and Vern Warwick will tell you some interesting tape messages he's left at my place in the past. Very, very humorous man, and very, very dedicated. He's got the ability of exposing a lot of corruption within the judiciary, within the governments of Manitoba. I would compare him almost in a way to David Hawkins in the amount of work that he's able to uncover on certain elements. And I think Gord's been doing it a lot longer, and in that context, he can tell you where the judges, the lawyers came from, what year they graduated, what school they graduated, who they came with, when they got appointed, all the commissions and studies they've been appointed, and on and on. Just a brilliant man. And he's about 60 years old, and we went in to view this document, and within a minute, I took one look at it. It was about 3 or 4 pages like this. I gave it to him. He took it, threw it in his briefcase, and ran out, and I blocked everybody from running after them. So we got a copy, and I'll tell you, things changed. And we thought about this. I want to emphasize that a lot. We thought for 2 or 3 months about what we were going to do, and we suffered. We had a lot of charges falsified against us. They've come down very, very hard on us in Manitoba. They tried banning me from the courts. To a certain degree, they've been successful for one reason only. I was stupid enough that I shouldn't say stupid, but I didn't know the law at that time. I went and got a lawyer. And the lawyer was very, very stupid and did some things he shouldn't. And the issue is still live. It's still before the courts. I haven't even filed a statement of defense in 3 years because I haven't been in Manitoba. But we got the documents, some changes started happening. They started taking the charges. And the reason I relate that story is I want everybody to understand how important it is to be on the offensive all the time. Think of ways to attack these people. They are working with all their effort at doing everything possible to destroy your rights and freedoms. Some are doing it knowingly, some aren't. Some are simply following orders, which, as you know, is no excuse for breaking the law or destroying your rights and freedoms in this country. As long as you are defending yourself, they've got you. You have to be offensive-minded. And that offensive-minded attitude, it can be manifested in many, many ways. There is no one set way that's going to work for everybody. And we absolutely have to get rid of that view. We have to get rid of the belief that there's a panacea out there. You can file this document. Nobody's going to touch you anymore. It doesn't work that way. There is no one set way. Everybody's got different circumstances. The people we're dealing with have different agendas. Maybe the guy's got a personal dislike for you, and the actions he takes are going to be different. And what works for one person isn't going to work for the other. So you have to be open-minded and be able to take in a lot of ideas to determine what is going to be on the offensive. The other day when Mr. Nick Begich was speaking, he pointed out, and I hope most of you will remember this, that these people, specifically the government officials, and I like to refer to the police in there because I think they're as corrupt, if not more so, than the government. These people are not being held criminally accountable for their actions. We all know you give a complaint or a charge on the RCMP to a member of their force, what happens? Either nothing, or it goes to one of their useless internal complaint review processes. And they come up and they say, oh, look, the officer says sorry, we're going to stay the charge. Negotiation comes in, the officer walks away laughing. He really does. Tell any officer you're going to get a complaint if the circumstances present itself, and watch the officer just laugh, because they know nothing happens. So once we got this document, that's when I made the conscious attempt to find out how you can lay a criminal charge. As you'll see in the video on Debbie in several minutes from now, they come up in the video and they try and tell you that it's this little known section of the criminal code, very rarely used, very rarely. Well, I want to tell you something. Your right to lay a criminal charge comes from common law. And it goes back millennia before police even existed. You have a moral and ethical obligation to report criminal activity in your community or wherever you see it. And that can manifest itself in several ways. You can put the person under citizen's arrest if you catch them in the act. You have to catch them. And there's a process to follow. You have to touch the person, tell them they're under arrest, and you have to hold them until you can call the police. But there's a process that has to be followed. You can't just say to somebody, you're under arrest. And the second method is to actually go down and lay a criminal charge. And I've been teaching, especially with the help of Debbie lately, a lot of people how to go about that process. I really want to get that out to as many people as possible. We've got people like Mr. Begich, like Mr. Hawkins, and several others who have a lot of knowledge on corruption in the upper levels of government. It doesn't do much good staying there. It's got to come out somehow. And to talk and let everybody know is great, but when the police sit back and they just sweep it under the rug, again, they laugh and they walk away. So we've got to be able to go on the offensive and start laying criminal charges on these people. It's a simple process. It really is very simple. To quote Vern the other day, it's so simple it repels the mind. And yet they have made it so complicated. The stories I could tell you on how they wouldn't even have the forms out there. They would tell you to go to talk to the police, or they would tell you to go to the Crown Prosecutor's office, and you don't have to do either. And in various areas, excuse me, like Edmonton, I went up one day in Edmonton. The JP wouldn't even give me the forms. So I told her in 3 weeks she was going to have those forms out there, and she laughed at me. She laughed at me, and she said, "Get out of here." So I wrote the assistant, or the deputy minister, the attorney general, I should say, for Alberta, Havelock, and I told him, I can't even lay charges against you for obstruction of justice because they won't take the charges. So I said, I have one alternative. I will go down and I will file at the Court of Queen's Bench, which is analogous to your Supreme Court here. I will file an application having you, as Attorney General, responsible for the JPs, cited for contempt of court, for abusing the court's process, obstruction of justice, fraud, breach of trust, and so on. 3 weeks later, I got a letter back saying, Mr. Lindsay, we're sorry, the forms are out there. And I went back 3 weeks later. The JP tried to cover it up, and I managed to look through their little bulletproof glass, right? We're dangerous. So I managed to look through there, and she had a stack that high of informations, as they're called, okay? And I've tried to do this right across Canada. Every city I've been in, every town, I've gone to the provincial courts and made sure those charge forms are out there. In Debbie's case, the JP didn't have a clue how the procedure even worked. He had to go to his manual. He'd never done it before. These justices of the peace have no legal training, which is pretty sad when they're trying to implement measures of the criminal code. But if you don't think for 1 second that it affects these people, I want you to keep in mind something. These people are very, very sheltered. They live in a little clique of corruption that they think they're immune from anything. It includes the police, your government and court officials, and so on. They all think, nothing, go ahead, do it. We don't care. They think they can do whatever they want. And when they're sitting there one day, all of a sudden an RCMP walks up to them, or sheriff, and says, hey, John, here's a summons. You've got to appear in court, buddy. You've been charged. These people get so paranoid, they don't know what to do. I've never seen this before. What do I do? Oh, my God, I've been charged with an offense. My career is on the line. All my corruption. What else is coming up that they don't even know about, right? And the first thing they do, of course, is they go to their lawyer, and their lawyer says, don't worry about it. But they still got that charge hanging over their head, and they don't know what to do. And they live with the fear. If anybody here has ever been charged criminally, even with a speeding ticket, and you know your license is on the line, the fear that you live with, the stress that you live with is very, very high. And these people, do you think they're any different? They live, they depend on their six-figure salaries, all the perks and benefits. And when that's on the line and that's threatened, they get very, very scared. Very scared. And it has a major effect on these people. So it's important that we continually try and keep on the offensive with these people. And I believe the strongest way, the best way of keeping on the offensive is to bring these people to court. No one is above the rule of law, and that is common law in this country. And when we have a situation that we have today where they're trying to keep it that way, they're trying to make sure certain people are above the rule of law, it's important for every one of us, when you know that these people have committed a criminal offense, to walk down and lay a charge. In Manitoba last year, 400, and a population of less than 1 million laid criminal charges on their own. I'm currently trying to find out how many were laid in British Columbia last year. I've been waiting about 3 weeks for a response now. But every province has it. It's prescribed under the criminal code. I will tell you right off the bat that it does deal to a certain degree, to a very large degree, with legal fictions. Anybody here familiar with how a person is defined in the Income Tax Act? If you've heard Alex Muljaney talk or Eldon Warman on his material, you will find that the definition of person basically means a corporate entity. It does not involve us as flesh and blood humans. Everybody seems to think the criminal code is different. That's different. That's the criminal code. That's not the Income Tax Act. Has anybody here actually tried to look up the definitions in the criminal code of what a person is? Nobody? Well, I'll tell you, the definition is almost verbatim the same as in the Income Tax Act. It only applies to artificial persons. The federal government doesn't exist in this country. So when you get into their system, and these people, they don't have a clue. They really don't. They have to be brought to justice somehow. There is no other way other than laying a criminal charge against them, and unfortunately it is in their system. I point that out for your benefit. But you go down and lay a criminal charge on these people, they have no idea what the definitions are. These people, even the people that work in the system, they don't